All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the Society of Thoracic Surgeons Congenital Heart Surgery Database monthly webinar. Today is Tuesday, January the 16th. Is today Tuesday or Wednesday? I forget. They all run together. So welcome to today's monthly webinar. On the call with me today, let's see here, from the STS side, we have myself and Carol Crone. We have Addie Dolan, Chastity Walnuts, Emily Conrad, Leslie Wacker, Melinda Offer, and then we have Dr. Meyer is our surgeon today, and also from the IQVIA side, we have Case. So thanks everyone for joining today. Appreciate you guys being on with me. I'm just going to provide some brief STS updates, and then per usual, I'll turn things over to Chastity and Leslie to provide our data manager education. And then we'll finish up today's webinar with the Q&A. If you have questions, please be sure to submit those via the Q&A function. I am actually going to go ahead and turn off the chat box real quick. So again, please be sure to put any questions that you have into the Q&A function, and then we'll get to those throughout the presentation or at the end as needed. Also, the raise hand function is enabled. So if you'd like to just ask your question in person, please be sure that your microphone is enabled on your end, and then we'll unmute you and you can ask your question. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into our STS updates. So the January training manual is posted and available out on the STS website. The fall 23 harvest analysis, as you're aware, is complete and reports have been posted. The report, if you do have any report related questions, please submit those questions to our help desk via stsdb_helpdesk@sts.org. Again, just would like to reemphasize, if you do have any questions at all about your report, please submit them to the help desk so we can look into your questions and then look into your questions and provide feedback directly and as quickly as possible. The analysis overview is posted out on the STS website. Just make sure that you do have the most current updated version. The current version is dated August 10th of 2023. So just ensure that you do have the most current and up-to-date version of the overview. I think Leslie's going to give some more information about the overview later on in her presentation, point out how you can get to it and where it's located. The harvest composite quality rating summary document, our analytics team has sent that to me, so that will be posted and available within the IQVIA platform by close of business today. So that information will be available for you. You can download, again, the harvest composite quality rating summary later on this afternoon. Our CHSD Public Reporting update, our next update is scheduled to take place late Q1 2024. So later on this first quarter, and will include results from the from the just released fall 23 analysis. So again, the public reporting update is scheduled to take place late Q1. If you have not previously submitted to public reporting, the next submission deadline is Friday, February the 2nd. Just a reminder, if you have previously consented, you do not have to submit another consent. So the submission deadline is for any site that has not previously submitted a public reporting consent. The spring 24 harvest is currently underway, and we are accepting the surgery dates that will be included in the 24 harvest, the spring 24 harvest, January 1, 2020, up through December 31st of 2023. The 2024 harvest schedule has been posted and is available out on the STS website. I've included it here if you'd like to take a snapshot, or you can grab it from the slides that will be posted after today's webinar. They'll typically be posted within 48 hours after the webinar. Our meetings and marketing team, we do have our STS annual meeting coming up, so it may be just a little bit delayed getting those webinars posted. But if there is a delay, just know that our team is working on getting these presentations posted as quickly as possible. If you have not already heard, if you're new joining us here, if you're new data manager webinar, new to our data managers, the 2024 AQO. Our data manager meeting is back live and in person this year. We're super excited. AQO 2024 AQO will be held in Nashville, Tennessee, September 10th through the 13th. So we are looking forward to being back live and in person. And more information about AQO will be coming out soon. So if you have any questions, again, just please submit those via the Q&A, but STS will be sharing more information about 2024 AQO in the coming months. That's all I have for STS updates. I'm going to, excuse me, I'm going to turn things over to Chastity and Leslie so they can hop on our data manager education. Chas, I think you're up first.
Excellent. Thank you, Leanne. Sorry, everyone, I have a cold, so I apologize if my voice gets cracky. Today, Leslie and I are going to discuss most of this is going to be a repeat to you, but we thought now was a nice time to repeat some important information. And some of this, what I'm going to speak on is really related to the definitions of fields in 6.23.2. And we derived this information from the FAQs you submitted. So thank you very much for submitting those and giving us ideas to come to you today with what we can, better reinforce definition wise. And then Leslie is gonna, great timing, follow up with how to interpret your analysis report. So I think both are probably good topics to discuss today. Next slide. Okay, so in November, you will recall that I presented these same exact slides. And so, but I do want to just reinforce, since it is now past the go live date of January 1st of 2024. So let's go through these slides again. Again, this is not new if you were on the webinar in November or have listened to the webinar from November, but it was determined by the task force that we are not adequately capturing the current risk of procedures in our prior operation counts. And so with that, we're going to make some changes to how we are counting prior operations as a field in the database. So for example, where we were seeing that this risk was not adequately being captured were, patients that perhaps are undergoing heart transplant today who had previously been implanted with a VAD. And maybe they no longer have their VAD at the time of their heart transplant, and there's no way to capture the risk that they had a VAD implantation through perhaps a sternotomy incision. So next slide. So what is going to change? So in the field, specifically, number of prior cardiac operations, where you have a prior procedure of number 2380, and thank you to those of you who emailed me to let me know I was being dyslexic and got these numbers transposed. Prior procedure 2380, which is VAD implantation, during a procedure where your op type is VAD, and the incision type is any but other. So it could be a sternotomy or a thoracotomy or any of those that are listed, but not other. Also, prior procedure 2360, ECMO cannulation, where the op type is ECMO. And again, the incision type is any of those that are listed, but not other. Next slide. So when we look at the prior number of cardiac operations, what the training manual is going to look like is exactly what's on this slide. So again, the definition is indicate the number of surgical procedures performed prior to this procedure based on the criteria below. So what is unchanged are the first two bullet items: any prior surgery with op type 1, CPB cardiovascular, any prior surgery with op type 2, no CPB cardiovascular. And then now the two new inclusions: any prior surgery where the procedure is 2380 VAD implant, if and only if the op type is 6 VAD with CPB, or even 7 VAD without CPB. And then the incision type is not number 6 other. And then the same goes with ECMO: any prior surgery with a procedure 2360 ECMO cannulation, if and only if the op type is number 3 ECMO, and the incision type is not other. Next slide. So again, the prior number of CPB cardiac operations is going to change slightly, and this will be very different than from our just prior cardiac operations. So again, now we're at CPB operations, and we're looking at procedure 2380 VAD implantation, where the op type is VAD with CPB, and the incision type is any but other. So next slide. What the training manual will look like now for the number of prior CPB cardiac operations, where we're going to indicate the number of surgical procedures performed prior to this procedure based on the criteria below. And again, number one is unchanged. Bullet point number one is unchanged. Any prior surgery with op type 1 CPB cardiovascular. And now we are including any prior surgery with a procedure 2380 VAD implant if and only if the op type is 6 VAD with CPB or 7 without CPB, and the incision type is not other. And I apologize, I don't think VAD without CPB should be on this slide. So I will update that and put that out. The training manual is updated appropriately. So I will confirm that in this slide. It should be VAD with CPB only for CPB operations. So my apology for pointing that out right now. But just so you know, there are great examples in the webinar from November that Leslie presented on the prior number of operations, whether just cardiac operations or CPB operations. So I urge you to go back to the November webinar and go through Leslie's examples. She does a lot of different examples, sternums that are already open and things like that. And so I urge you to go back and go through those again, because I think that they'll be very helpful. Next slide. So just to look at some logistics with this change, these new count definitions go into effect or went into effect on January 1st of 2024. You are not going to go back to previous operations and recode your number of operations. So this starts with the patient who rolled in your door on January 1 or who perhaps is in-house on January 1, but surgical January 1, 2024 moving forward. Also, you must have documentation to be able to count a procedure. So for example, if you're trying to count a prior op of, an ECMO cannulation with a sternotomy and not an incision type of other, then it needs to be documented in your medical record, because obviously you're going to be audited on these fields. And so ECMO cannulation should be documented like via sternotomy or via thoracotomy, things like that. So you need to have the documentation. You can't just make an assumption that because somebody had a VAD cannulation or ECMO cannulation that it was for sure not incision type other. And so make sure you have that documentation before you count it. Next slide. Okay, so something else that's been a confusing point in the database to people is CPB time while a patient is cannulated for ECMO or VAD or mechanical circulatory support. And so I did add a little bit of clarification to the training manual. This is not different from version 3.41. So this is no different than what we did there, and it's in the training manual from 3.41, but it needed to be carried over to 6.23.2. So again, this is just a clarification and is not anything new or anything different than what we had already advised you to do in 3.41. So in the specific scenario where perhaps the ECMO or VAD circuit is providing CPB support for a case, and this is where your op type is CPB cardiovascular, you're going to enter the perfusion fields as best as you can. We understand that perhaps you don't have cooling time, perhaps you don't have other features that we usually capture when somebody is on CPB. Fill out anything that you can, and you're going to have to leave blank things that are unknown or weren't utilized. And then of note, and I think this is the confusing point, the CPB time is the length of the procedure. So you're using skin incision start time, which is sequence 1835, to your time of skin closure, which is sequence 1965. And this will be added to the training manual that will get posted in February. So again, this is not a change from 623.2. It's actually mentioned in the training manual. We've received this question multiple times, so it is posted there. I understand though, back in 3.41, how difficult the training manual was to use. And so hopefully now we've made it quite clear that this is what you do when you're using ECMO and VAD support for an op type CPB cardiovascular case. Next slide. Okay, so post-op event coding. So again, there is no change here between versions 3.41 and 623.2 at all. So in the existing training manual from 623.2, it does say under post-op events, assign the applicable post-op events to either one, the index operation, since that is where all events will be assigned upon analysis, or 2, the operation that's most closely associated with the event. There are pros and cons to either way that you do this. So I think it's an organizational decision for you to decide where you would like your post-op events to reside. And maybe talk to other data managers to see what those, pitfalls are if you do it one way or another. So I think that, again, it really depends on how you as a data manager pull your data, or perhaps other people in your departments or hospitals that pull this data, that they understand that if you're going to follow guideline number 2, the operation that's most closely associated with the event, that they need to then look at data for all the events that occur and not just pull data for the index operation. Versus if you put everything on the index operation, then you only, you have one procedure to pull and perhaps then all of the post-op events. But again, I would say pros and cons to both. You just need to do it one way within your data and be consistent then with how you do this throughout your data. But this is not a change between 341 and 623.2 at all. This is the same statement, just remember we changed the word complication in 341 to post-op event in 623. Next slide. Okay, so operative death. This is often a confusing field in the database. And again, this remains unchanged between versions 341 and 623.2. So I pulled in what's existing in our training manual for 623.2 here. And just remember, operative death is defined as all deaths, regardless of cause, occurring during the hospitalization in which the operation was performed, even if after 30 days, including then those patients that are transferred to other acute care facilities. And also 2, all deaths, regardless of cause, occurring after discharge from the hospital, but before the end of the 30th postoperative day. So again, completely unchanged between multiple versions. And then how do you fill this field out? This is the point where I think people are confused. And so you'll see in the intent clarification, it's already there and has been there. This field should be completed accurately for all procedures performed, index and non-index, including all operation types, regardless of whether the case will be analyzed or included in a specific analysis table. So based on the questions that are coming in, Leslie and I have realized that people are saying, I'm only answering operative death, yes or no, on the index operation. And then I'm answering no to all of the rest of the procedures. And that's not the case. You should be answering this on every procedure performed. And if the patient has died, then all the procedures performed are going to, during the episode of care, all the procedures or operations that occurred during that episode of care will have operative death completed as yes or no appropriately. So we don't want to leave any of these blank. And it's not just for the index operation. It is index, non-index, analyzed, non-analyzed. This is a field that should be completed. Next slide. Okay, so blood product administration. This is definitely a marked change between 341 and 623.2. And you know it has been a pinch point in this database, so I don't have to tell you. But I think if we can keep straight how we're supposed to be collecting this now, it has been made a little easier in version 623.2. So there are 3 sections of the database where blood products are captured. So unfortunately, if you have an adult patient and you participate in anesthesia, you're collecting blood in 3 sections of the database. And each of these sections collects blood products differently from one another. They're looking at the information slightly differently. So I know that's painful, but it's just where other parts of the database, how the adults want to collect their blood products, how anesthesia wants to collect their blood products versus on all patients, how we want to collect blood products. So I know it's still perhaps a little bit painful, but just know it is different, and you're going to have to go, when you're collecting blood on a patient, you're probably going to have your training manual open, which I hope you do always anyway, but look and see, what the definitions are and what and when should be collected. So next slide. So we'll start with the first section of the database is the operative section, and this is where blood is collected on all patients. So regardless of age or whether you participate in anesthesia or not, you should be collecting blood in the operative section. And so from the data collection form up top, you're answering a question as to whether there, first, if there was an autologous transfusion, and then a transfusion of non-autologous blood products during or after the procedure. Of course, if you say yes to that, then you answer the next 3 questions. What were non-autologous blood products initiated before the patient left the OR? Yes or no? Were there blood products within 24 hours of the procedure, and then after 24 hours of the procedure? So this is it in the operative section. So this is a big change for us in the operative section. And then if you notice under intent and clarification, it gives some information about how to better answer these questions. But what I have highlighted below or underlined in red below is complete this field for each operative case separately. So whether it's the index operation or the non-index operation, it doesn't matter. You need to fill this field out of transfusion of non-autologous blood products and then the subsequent 3 questions separately for each case, because these are parent fields to some of the other sections of the database where blood is collected. So again, in the operative section, this is all patients, all ages, and we want to answer these fields for every procedure that is done or every operative case that is done, and not just the index operation. Next slide. Okay, so now in the post-operative section, when you are greater than or equal to 18 years of age, this is where the adults collect a little bit of extra information about blood products. So yes, you're already going to complete it in the operative section. And now if that patient is greater than or equal to 18 years of age, you're going to come to the post-op section and be asked some questions about blood products as well. So sequence number 4690, blood prod, is asking if blood products were used post-operatively, yes or no. And if yes, then they want you to enter the number of units administered of each of the specific products. So platelets, whole blood, cryoprecipitate, things like that. And so then you're just entering the number of units. Now look below, we've already actually clarified this back September, but please note, answer this field on the index operation only. Now in the training manual, what came over initially was the initial operation, and that's adult language, and we recognized that in September and updated to say, answer this field on the index operation only. And then just code 2 no for non-index operations. And so that's your guidance for patients, adult patients greater than 18 years of age. So you're not answering this, different than the operative section, but in the adult section, you are not doing that, completing these fields on every operation that occurred during the episode of care. You're only doing it on the index operation. So that should, decrease a little bit of data burden. Next slide. So then in the anesthesia section, you are only going to complete the fields within the anesthesia section if your site is participating in the anesthesia section. Otherwise, you can ignore this. So again, those parent fields that came from the operative section that we've asked you to complete on every case that goes to the OR, those 2 parent fields, 2350 transfusion of non-autologous blood products initiated before leaving the OR, as well as 2355 transfusion of non-autologous blood products within 24 hours post-procedure. If you say if you have said yes to one of those, then it's going to ask you to enter the amounts in milliliters of each of the specific types of blood products. And so you'll see here, complete this and this is from the training manual, complete this for every procedure where anesthesia data is being collected. In the event the operation occurs within another operation occurs within 24 hours, stop the data collection on the first event and begin collection on the subsequent procedure. And so this is how the anesthesia folks wanted the blood product collected in their section of the database. Next slide. Okay. So I think this might be my last topic for discussion, but it's the unplanned cardiac reoperation reason. And so again, the definition is existing. I think we just need to, so there's not a change here. I think we need to call it out and make people aware of it. So for sequence number 4755, post-operative event, reoperation reason. So you've already selected in the post-op event section that the patient has had an unplanned cardiac reop. And so now what opens is the reoperation reason, and you have to select all that apply. And so there is number 1, residual or recurrent lesion, number 2, reoperation for bleeding or suspected bleeding, and then 3, mediastinal reexploration for reasons other than recurrent bleeding or suspected bleeding. And so in other words, a mediastinal exploration for anything other than the other 2 choices. So while the header states mediastinal exploration for reason other than, If you go to the next slide, Leanne. The intent and clarification states that this is an unplanned cardiac re-op. So that is an operation with op-type CPB cardiovascular, no CPB cardiovascular for any reason other than recurrent bleeding, suspected bleeding, residual or recurrent lesions. And so I think this is what we needed to call out. This is your catch-all. It is for every other cardiac operation that you've done that isn't for bleeding or residual lesion. And so it does include mediastinal explorations, mediastinal washouts, and sternal reopening when not done for bleeding or suspected bleeding. Absolutely. But this is your catch-all for any reason other than recurrent bleeding or suspected bleeding or residual or recurrent lesions. So this is already there. It is not a change. I'm just calling it out because Leslie and I have received a couple of questions regarding this. And to be honest, I had to go back and, putting these slides together and was like, oh, it does actually already say this, and I didn't realize it. So we meant for this to be a catch-all. I agree that the header is somewhat confusing because it says mediastinal re-exploration, and it probably should say, any other procedure. But we're going to work with it, and now everybody has been notified. Next slide. So in summary, remember that our prior operation count will start with surgery dates on 1/1/24 and after, so you're not going backwards to do anything. Please continue to submit an FAQ when you are unsure. It also really helps us determine what is needed in these webinars and what Leslie and I need to do to support everybody. So, please submit those FAQs. We appreciate them so much. And make sure you also know that you're finding that documentation of incision type for your prior operation counts. And I think that ends it for me.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. So we'll move on to analysis report interpretation. Next slide. All right, so first thing before we even look at our report, I wanted to bring our attention back to the CHSD analysis overview document that is on the website. And Leanne, if you go to the next slide, I pulled that up a little larger to see. So it's under additional resources, CHSD analysis overview. If you have been doing this for more than maybe 3 or 4 years, you're probably very used to hearing Chastity and I tell you to read the analysis overview before you even look at your report. It's now digital and not in that kind of large PDF document of hundreds of pages that we received. But it's still equally important to go through this, and we'll get into why and what's in there in the next few slides. Next one. Okay, so you'll pull it up. Again, it's on the website. It is bookmarked. And you can see all of the different sections there on the left-hand side of what's covered in the analysis overview. It's about 50 pages. Most of it isn't going to change significantly from report to report, but it is a good idea to take a few minutes and scan through this when the reports come out. Next slide. Okay, so you have your analysis overview up already, and then you can log into IQVIA. In the platform, go to operational reports and then click on the CHSD risk adjusted dashboard report. And this is like our analysis report or feedback summary, as it used to be called. Next slide. You will very easily enter your parameters, your reporting period. That's going to be your 4-year harvest window. As a reminder, it's 4 years of aggregate data updated every 6 months in accordance with our harvest period. And then you'll apply the parameters. Next slide. And then you will get this screen here. So you'll have a section of risk adjusted and analytical reports, a section of lesion specific reports, and then your anesthesia reports. Keep in mind that not all of these are risk adjusted, although those are the titles used. Next slide. And as a reminder, you'll only get those anesthesia reports if you're an anesthesia participant. Next slide. Okay, so looking in a little more detail, here are the reports available in those 3 sections. We'll start at the top left here with table number 1. Thanks, Leanne. When you open table number 1, next slide, these are the categories that you will see. We've been over this a few times of what all of these mean, but again, to review, next slide, pull up your analysis overview, click on, I should have made that a lot larger, risk adjusted and analytical reports, which is the title of that section. Next slide. And it will tell you number submitted and in analysis table 1. It'll go through what each of these categories mean and what's included in each one. And that's right in the analysis overview. Go ahead. Sorry, Eileen.
Sorry about that. Oh, I got a
That's
little,
okay.
I got a little click happy. Sorry about that.
I'm a little wordy. That's all right. Go ahead and go to the next slide.
You're fine.
Okay, so moving down to the next one, table 7, it's divided into 2 reports. So click on table 7. Next slide. These are the kind of categories. This is just one report, so it's neonates and infants. The next one would be children and adults. Go back to your analysis overview. You'll scroll down a little bit, still in that risk adjusted section. This is table 7. So operations submitted, operations and analysis, patients and analysis, same definitions as table 1. But now we have it broken out by age. And so this gives you the different age categories. Next slide. Okay, and this is similar for table 16, 18, and 19. I won't go into detail, but the next slide shows you same thing, analysis overview, table 16. Next slide. Table 18. And this also includes, you can kind of see a little in the screenshot, this is for benchmark operations, and there's a table in the analysis overview that tells you exactly which procedure code needed to have been selected as primary of the index operation of the episode of care to get into this table. Next slide. And similarly for table 19, this tells you this is operations further analyzed by stat category. And then there's a note for everyone that postoperative length of stay is set to missing if over 364 days. Those are just your kind of key elements to each of these tables. Okay, next slide. Now we'll move on to the lesion specific reports. Next slide. And as you may have guessed, this also has its own section in the analysis overview. You'll click on the required primary diagnosis and procedure lists for inclusion in lesion specific reporting. Next slide. There it is. Next slide again. And this also will take you exactly to where you need to be in the analysis overview. It again comes with an entire table of the required primary diagnosis and primary procedure of the index operation of the episode of care that is required to get into this table. And I just wanted to point out here again, next slide, Leanne. It does include, I think I highlighted it, those 5,000 codes. There it is. Yeah. It does include those 5,000 codes. So it's been updated with those available codes. Okay, next slide. One more thing that you'll notice for each of those kind of screenshots that I put in there, there's a little note. Please refer to the CHSD risk adjusted calculation spreadsheet for further information in the technical details. So I wanted to show you where that would be. Next slide. We're going to go back to our IQVIA platform and go to the library and then click on analysis report calculation spreadsheet. That also will be updated for the harvest period. Next slide.
Right. Just real quick, I also wanted to point out, Leslie, there is a link here for the analysis report overview. So if you click here, the link, it'll take you back out to the STS website to access the analysis report overview. Just wanted to point that out.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so when you open that report, this again, at the very bottom, it's organized by table correlating with those reports. And so you can dive into, if you're interested, each field and how it's reported, and then what has to be selected in order to get into that box or into that field or whatever number is reported in the overall report. Next slide. Okay, and then I also wanted to point out in table 1, I'm not sure that we've highlighted this in the past. When you open table 1 in this new report, go ahead into the next slide. You will see that there's some additional categories across the top. So now you will see participant primary, so that's what we've selected, you've selected at your site. STS primary, that's what is selected per the rules and exceptions, all the algorithm, and what is analyzed, and then which stat mortality category that falls into. So this is particularly important because our analysis window is 4 years, but we have not had access to all of the codes in the database for all 4 years. So the next slide, I think, highlights one line in this report that shows that the site has 1590 selected as their primary procedure. and the STS has analyzed code 5000, which is a new combo 1590 and 1330. So this is important, and I think it's very useful to kind of go back and say, oh, okay, that one fits into stat 4, or this one fits into whatever it may be, because there were some shifting around, as we all remember, from the previous versions. Next slide. Okay, and then back to the analysis overview. I wanted to point out here that that document that is determining the primary diagnosis and primary procedure is also now housed in this document. It is bookmarked on the left. It's circled over there. Leanne, next slide. And this is where you will see everything that used to be in that separate document that was on the website. It's now embedded in the analysis overview. Also includes all the 5,000 codes, but it goes through, the overall rule is the highest mortality score of the index operation of the episode of care with these exceptions, and then you can continue to scroll through. I just stuck a quick screenshot in there for reference. Next slide. Okay, and then on the STS website, I forgot what I was pointing out some previous webinars that are also good resources. So we've gone through in a little bit more detail where, kind of how to figure out, do your numbers match, where you can look for those things. Go in the data manager section of the website under congenital heart surgery, view past webinars.
Oops, sorry. Click happy again. Click happy again.
View past webinars, and then that will bring you to the list. And I've put in here the dates from a year ago, the last time we kind of went through in more detail of these reports. And then there are links there as well. And then the final slide, I believe, is just a list of kind of all of the resources that might be helpful when going through your report. So on the website, the analysis overview, Appendix C, which are old and new scores, the training manual, of course, past webinars, and then in the IQVIA library, the calculation spreadsheet. I think that covers that.
Yes, and I know we have, thank you, Chastity and Leslie. I'm sorry, I got a little click happy there, so apologize. I do know we have several questions. Let's go ahead and start tackling the questions. Our first question from Nancy, I think Leslie, you said you could answer this one, where the STS US News will report questions to benchmarks, neonatal question E37.5 and 37.6. I don't know.
Yeah.
Can you?
So I don't know, Nancy, exactly what the specific question is, but of course, as you probably all remember and have heard us said, that we do not inform US News of which questions to ask or how they should be asked. Those two in particular do need to come from your local data. That is not data provided within the published reports. And then as a U of M person also doing the survey, I know that there have been FAQs submitted and the answers have been sent out to sites regarding both of those questions. So I would suggest following up with your US News person or submitting more questions to them if you have them.
Perfect. Next question from Liz. If we have a patient, for example, that had a hybrid procedure as their index in 341, and then had a Norwood during 6232, do you suggest putting the complications on the Norwood as well, as it's in a different version? We're collecting new complications or updated definitions to the complications, or should we only enter the complications to the hybrid index case in version 341?
Yeah, so Liz, that's a great question. As Chastity pointed out, there are going to be different styles of how we collect postoperative events. If your site traditionally only collects them on index, then I would stick with that going forward. But for these rare patients that sort of overlap the version upgrade, my advice would be to still collect it on the index operation based on the options and definitions you have for that event, because that is what's going to be analyzed. Chas, what do you think?
Yes, I was gonna say the exact same thing. I would collect on the index. That's how I do it locally in Phoenix, and that's what will be analyzed.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next question from Marina. Collecting the blood for each procedure will make the blood products overlap a bit and be double collected in some instances, correct?
So when you look at what, Oh,
Go ahead, Chess.
No, I was gonna say, when you look at what you're going to collect for all patients, so in the operative section, you're really saying yes or no blood products were administered. And so overlap a bit, yes, but really by a yes or no, because it could happen in the next procedure. The next procedure could be within 24 hours of the previous procedure. So I mean, the answer is yes, that perhaps it was within 24 hours of the index procedure. And then let's say you did something within 24 hours of that, and you're saying yes during that procedure, of course. For the adults, we're doing it on the index only, so that should not overlap or be doubly collected. And then with the anesthesia section, you're to stop it on one case and start it on the next if a procedure were to happen within 24 hours. So other than the yes or no, you shouldn't really have overlap of amounts or anything.
Yep, exactly.
All right. And Janet wanted to know, oh, sorry, Janet, you have your hand raised. Janet wanted to know if the overview can have a date. I thought it did. So, and I also saw another person, people ask, where do you find the overview? So, I've got the STS website pulled up. There's a couple of ways to get to the overview. I prefer just from the STS homepage. I just click on the link down below for Data Manager. And then once you're brought to Data Manager, you can either click on Resources for Data Managers, Data Collection Forms. Personally, I click on Data Collection Forms to get there quicker. And then I click on Congenital Heart Surgery Database on the left-hand side, and it just brings me down here to the congenital section. Click on version 6232. And in the drop-down, you'll see the link for the training manual, the data collection forms, and then under additional resources, CHSD analysis overview. Yes, thank you, Jana. I'm going to have marketing add, much like how we have for the training manual updated January 2024. I'm going to have the see if marketing can add CHSD analysis overview updated August 10. I think August 10, 2023 was the last time it was updated. But if you download it, and the name of the document, it's got the date. So that's another way you can check to make sure that you have the current version. So that's where the overview is located. And thank you, Janet, for that feedback. Let's see here. All right. Next question from Kelly. For unplanned cardiac reop, if patient is on ECMO, an op type for unplanned cardiac reop, if patient is on ECMO and op type would be ECMO, would it still be considered unplanned cardiac reop?
So Kelly, I would go back and review your definitions for what constitutes an unplanned cardiac reop. And so it should not be an ECMO procedure or ECMO case unless ECMO provided the CPB support for a case. So I urge you to go back and review the definitions. If you have already done that and you know that the op type is ECMO, then that is not an unplanned cardiac reop.
It's true, Chas, but also we do have in the updated 623 definition for unplanned cardiac reoperation, it is op type CPB and no CPB, or a reoperation for bleeding regardless of op type.
Yes.
So if it's bleeding, yep, that's okay, because we no longer have that separate post-op event reoperation for bleeding or bleeding requiring reoperation. It is considered an unplanned cardiac reop. So if it's ECMO and it's for bleeding, it still goes in that category. And that is in the definition in the training manual.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Janet, let me unmute. Janet, you're unmuted. Now you had a couple of questions, but I'm just going to go ahead and read your next question, but you're unmuted if you wanted to chime in as well. Is your STS database documenting sternotomies for ECMO a source for audit, or would you need to pull all the op notes from these cases if you don't have documentation in the current admission record?
So I would never say that your database is a source for audit. I would say the source is what you use to determine that it was a sternotomy for the ECMO cannulation. And so that would be, if that's in the op notes or wherever else it would be documented in your EHR. Leslie, do you agree?
Yep, but you do have to have proof. We're not assuming it's a sternotomy. We're not assuming we know the incision type. So,
So
if
these are,
it's-
so if these are remote cases, you would have to have documentation that the ECMO was done centrally
Correct.
for audit.
yes.
Okay,
Another example, I think that Dr. Subramanian gave on a previous call was if you have a current op note and it, indicates that there had been a sternotomy for ECMO in the current op note, that is okay. But yes, you do have to be able to prove the incision type of the ECMO or the VAD.
All right, thank you. Next question from Brooke. Is there a place in IQVIA that displays the operative mortalities that is being counted for the upcoming 4-year period in one of the many reports on there? What is everyone using to validate the mortalities prior to harvest close date? Understanding, of course, that there is potential for the number to change upon analysis.
Yeah, Brooke, that's a great question. And there is a place in operational reports. I think it's the non.
Yeah, it's the
Or-
participant dashboard, the non-risk adjusted.
Yep, the non-risk
thank you.
adjusted report.
Yep, I'm pulling it up now. Let's see here. I don't know what site I have. So let's just look at 719 procedures. I'm going to do all age. I'm going to do all index only. Sorry, let me do this. Apply parameters. Sorry, let's give it just a second. And you can go, mortalities. Sorry. Where is it at? Oh, okay. So for under the click on your discharge readmission tab here, and then you can look at mortality status at hospital discharge. You can check your numbers here: alive, dead, missing. You can click on here, and it'll get in the drop down. It'll identify which patient has a missing mortality status at hospital discharge. Same thing for database discharge, operative mortality. Same thing here. Yes, no, missing. All that information. You can just use that function there, Brooke. Chas, Leslie, do you guys have any other? Do you utilize any other functions within the platform, or is that how you use to check?
No, this is where I do it, and I do it separate. I'll do all cases and then index only as well, just to double check.
And keep in mind that the operative mortality that you see in this, it's non-analyzed. So it's what you've indicated as operative mortality.
Right. Yep, that's the operative mortality variable that you say yes or no. All right.
can I go back to the ECMO sternotomy thing for just a minute? Sorry.
Sure.
So if you don't know the answer, you should assume that they're not sternotomies. If you're doing a lot of reoperations on complex patients at your centers and you don't have this information.
Correct.
Got it. And that'll be documented in the training manual, so it'll match for audit.
That we don't assume it's a sternotomy.
Right. So if you don't know, it's acceptable to have it as a no. Okay. Thank you so much.
All right. Let's see here. Liz, it would be great to know exactly what was updated in the last analysis report. Providing details, as the only message received was that table 29 was missing, but I noticed that table 16 risk adjusted rate was also updated. This affected us, especially when we have US News Survey February 2024 using the analysis report ending June 23. Thank you, Liz. I'll take that feedback back. But once the new reports were posted, I don't know if you download the previous report, but I would always use the most current version of the report that was posted. But yes, thank you. I'll take that feedback back to the group. All Regarding table 7, I'm assuming the column titled June 7. Regarding tables, I'm assuming the column titled June 2022 through June 23, those cases are also included in the column labeled July 19 through 2023. They just separated out the last year for some reason. Is this correct?
Yes, so in some tables in the report, there are, just like on table 1, they have a total column for all 4 years, but then also the July to June for each individual analysis year. So this is true in table 7. There's the last 1 year and then all 4 years. So your last 1 year is included in your total 4 years.
Next question from Jen. The links in IQVIA do not take you directly to the report on the STS website. You still have to navigate to it by clicking through all of the CHSD pages. It would be really helpful to have it take you directly to the report you select in IQVIA. I know once the link from the IQVIA website takes you to the STS website, you still have to log in to the STS website to access the those resources. So I don't think they can provide a link that takes you directly to the specific report. You'd be prompted to log in, but I'll check with Melanie and see if we can make any updates to the link or what their capability is in terms of linking out directly to a specific report. So I'll check with Melanie on that. Thank you. Let's see here. In cardio access, the mortality information asks for each case if there was operative mortality, and you would assign mortality to this case. If there are multiple cases, would mortality always be assigned to the index case?
So Liz, what I would say to this is, if you notice, assign mortality to this case does not have a sequence number and is not included in the training manual and is not included on the data collection form. So that means this is a field that your vendor provides to you and not something that STS utilizes in any way. So how you choose to use a vendor specific field that is just local to your hospital, you can do with it whatever you want. So it is not an STS field. It is not used in the analysis, and STS doesn't use that to determine which case should be considered indexed. Because as you recall, you answer things like op type and procedures and things, and on the back end, STS then can identify what is the correct index operation.
Okay, thank you. Sam, the analysis report calculation spreadsheet doesn't include the 5,000 codes for table 18. So if those are included, then the spreadsheet needs to be updated. All right, I'll have to look out, Sam, and take a look and see if that spreadsheet needs to be updated. So I'll
Is
follow
table
up.
18 the benchmark operations?
Yes.
So there are not a lot of 5,000 codes, I believe, that are going to hit those, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Not a lot, but I think there are a couple, and I know we looked over it, so we'll have to go back and review and make
Yep.
sure the right version's out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Has anyone been able to fully validate the most recent harvest report? I have found the exported reports are missing several records. So we have gotten a couple of questions submitted to the help desk about the Excel download file. IQVIA is looking into it. It looks like that Excel file may be being truncated for some reason. So the number that is included in the report on the platform, the overall number for the 4 years is correct. So you all have indicated those numbers are correct, but for some reason, when that data is being exported into that Excel file, it's being truncated for some reason. So IQVIA is looking into that. I'll provide more information on that download file as soon as I get more information from the IQVIA team. But just thank you, we are aware, but just know that for some reason, it looks like that Excel file is being truncated for some reason. Okay, thank you, Heather. Why do you ask about labs and several other things if they aren't included in risk analysis? I'm having trouble convincing our team that we shouldn't leave data points unanswered, but I'm getting pushback. Yep.
It's a good question, Nancy, but there's a lot of fields that we ask for and collect that are not used in risk analysis. So part of participating is agreeing to collect on all cardiac operations that happen at your hospital with your surgeons included in your contract and all
Mhm.
fields.
Right. Yes, thank you. And I concur 110%. I have also submitted a ticket for the same issue as KPS and Heather. Missing March through December. Yeah, so like I said, that download Excel file is being truncated for some reason. So they are looking into that. And I'll share more information as soon as I can. Brooke, I'm sorry, Brooke, looks like you were adding on to a question, but that's for index, right? But it's for all CPB, no CPB, so not necessarily index.
I
Oh,
think
I
that
assume
was
you mean the unadjusted dashboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, that may be what the filter is
There's
just
a filter,
up
yeah.
text 1 and
Yeah,
2.
yep. As clarification, transthoracic ECMO cases prior to 2024 need to be included in the sternotomy totals, even though we don't have to go back in time to correct. In other words, in 2023, a patient has a central ECMO cannulation prior to their Norwood. The surgical count would be 1, and which would be 1 and 1 for Glenn performed in 2023. If the Glenn would be performed in 2024 instead, would the prior surgical count then be 2 and 1? Or would it be 1 and because the rule started June, it should be January 1, 2024?
Yeah. It's the first. So the first example that you gave, would the prior surgical count be 2 and 1? So 2 for total prior cardiac ops and 1 for total prior CPB ops. So we're starting the count with January 1st, 2024. And that includes operations that may have occurred before that, but we're not going back to prior operations and changing those counts. So don't go back to that Norwood in 2023 and say now they have 1 prior cardiac operation. Just leave that one alone. And then in 2024, we start including those.
Thank you. Chas, you mentioned you look at the number of operative mortalities for all cases and separately for index. Looking at all would allow you to see all CPB, no CPB, as well as everything else. So you can see if there is that uncommon occurrence when a patient who has multiple CPB, no CPB operations, and there is an operative death on a non-index CPB, no CPB procedure.
Yes, I guess I just logged into IQVIA to look at this. When you go into, and to also address your previous question, when you go into the participant dashboard report, the non-adjusted dashboard report, right at the beginning, you have to select your time period, the procedures, the age, and you can filter by index at that point. So that's where I said I can look at index operations versus all operations. And then yes, I just make sure that if in IQVIA, it says for total patients that I have, I'm going to make up a number, 15 deaths. I want to make sure in my local data that I only have 15 mortalities. So regardless of op type, regardless of anything, that I can see that I have 15 operations where there is a death. If I filter the reports by index operation, then it should match, say of those 15, 10 were index operations. And so it should match my local data. So I use the unadjusted report as a way to compare to reports I run out of my local software. Does that help?
Thank you. I'll keep looking, see if she wants to, if she has any clarifications. Janet, are there plans to make the IQVIA dashboard more helpful for benchmarking? Yes, Janet, thank you so much. I know you and I have talked and you have a lot of ideas, which I think is amazing. So we are working with IQVIA to implement IQVIA, the non-risk adjusted dashboard updates. If there are things that you all would like to see or on the non-risk adjusted dashboard, please feel free to email those enhancement requests to the help desk, or you can email them to me directly. That way we can start looking at your request and work to get updates added to that participant dashboard, that non-risk adjusted participant dashboard, because we want to make it useful for you all. And I just saw a question. To piggyback on Janet's question, specifically, we're looking for benchmarking data on individual post-operative events. So yes, I know right now, and Carol and I have talked about this for enhancing the non-risk adjusted dashboard to report individual post-operative events and not just post-operative events as a whole. So yes, that is in the works, and we are working with IQVIA and hopefully get that enhancement added soon, as soon as possible. Thank you, Amy and Janet. I appreciate your feedback. Krista, just want to clarify, are the tickets everyone is placing only for issues with the Excel download and not affecting PDF downloads for the report? So yeah, Krista, the issue that they are submitting is regarding table 1. And I'm just going table 1, and it's for the last 4. So when you highlight the cell and you click on see details, so where it gives you the itemized listing of the records that are included in that count, once you click and export that table into into Excel, it's not including all of the records that are included in those counts. So it looks like it's truncating once that Excel file is being created. So just to clarify that the numbers are in the report have been correct. And here, let me pull this over. For example, let me pull this over so you can get a visual. Oh, it's not letting me pull over. Hold on a second. So I've just opened up a report. So it's this listing here. When you export an export table into Excel, it's just not pulling out all of the records. Oh shoot, it's not pulling out all of the records that are included in that count. But again, the counts have been correct. Hold on, I closed out too many windows, guys. Oh, please. So I know Joyce, I think that's Joyce, had just made a comment that her table 16 op mortality is incorrect. Since they are missing so many of the tables, no, the tables are correct. Joyce, our team will be following up with you directly. I do not think that's a participant wide. I think that's a site specific issue. So someone from the team will be following up with you. But everyone else, we haven't gotten any other reports about table 16 being incorrect. So again, we'll be following up with you directly regarding that issue. New data manager here. Where do you get the released report data analysis report? So great question. Welcome to the new data manager. Welcome. If you have any questions, again, please feel free to ask them here and to reach out to myself as well. Let me get you to the analysis reports are found within the IQVIA platform. So you should have gotten access to the IQVIA platform when you were assigned as the new data manager. If you have not, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I have access to several. I'm just going to pick here the 999 report. So you would click on your report. Your page will look a little different. I have access to many different reports. So once you get to your IQVIA platform, your access, please, you would go here to operational reports under analytics, go to operational reports. You would click on operational reports, and then you would, from this page, you would click on CHSD risk adjusted dashboard report, and then you would select from the reporting period here, 7/1/19 to 6/30/23 is our most recent report. And that's where you would access your data analysis report. Our next question from Jen, let's see here. Was wondering if you call raises to the higher ups. When will we have data requests be available again? We're paying lots of money to participate in this database. and have not been able to get data requests filled since at least 2021. My facility is getting frustrated and angry about this.
I can take this one, Leanne. Thanks for the question, Jen. And we had to go on a pause for a short time as we brought analytics in-house at STS. I have heard that those requests will start again second quarter of 2024. So coming soon. And I think, Banu, are you familiar with those at all? And did you want to talk about those at all? Those are the minor data requests.
Yeah, thank you, Carol. I think we're planning on resuming them, as you stated, within the second quarter. The database community will be sent an email once we do that. So be on the lookout.
Thanks, Banu.
Sure.
Thanks, Banu. Thanks, Carol. Appreciate it. Okay, Brooke says, yes, that helps, Chas. Her main goal is making sure there's not an inadvertent yes or no on non-index procedures and being able to get a better idea of the denominator for 30-day missing operative mortality, since that's not necessarily attributed to index, but rather all no CPB procedures. I know how to validate internal, but with previous history of issues, IQVIA issues, it would be reassuring to know that this part of IQVIA matches my local data numbers. Perfect. And Janet, so yes, we do have an update on public reporting. I probably gave that update before you were able to hop on, but public reporting update, our next update is scheduled to take place in late Q1 this year, and it will include those results from the fall 23 analysis. All right. Let's see. All right. I know we are over time, so thanks everyone for joining today. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us directly. Thanks everyone for joining. I appreciate it. Chastity, Leslie, everyone. Thank you, Banu, Carol. If you have any questions, again, just reach out. We're happy to help. Thanks everyone. I hope you guys have a great day.